So let's go ahead and begin. Probably more people will continue to arrive here at the city center in Minneapolis, and maybe even for those of you on Zoom. But in any case, we'll go ahead and settle in, listen to our body, make the adjustments so you feel like you have a nice balance between this upright, alert quality in your body, whatever that might look like for you, and that sense of release and relaxation in the body. And both are equally important, so just find what feels like an appropriate balance for you today. You might want to start the meditation period with your eyes open. It's useful to see this is like an option, eyes open, eyes closed, so you can just get a sense of what might be useful. Sometimes when the mind is dull, it's better to have the eyes open. And of course, we're not looking at anything in particular. And just notice how seeing is happening without you needing to be looking at anything. There's just a natural sensitivity to the visual experience. In the same way to hearing, you don't have to try to hear. Hearing is just happening. So we haven't, and it's useful not to think that I need to meditate. We're just noticing that the heart, that the mind is already sensitive in the ways that it's sensitive. Without me doing anything, there's sensitivity to seeing and sensitivity to hearing. There's naturally sensitivity to touching, the touches. Sensitivity to smells and tastes, maybe to a lesser degree. And sensitivity even to mental activities, thoughts, emotions that come and go. So again, unfortunately, we all have some baggage around the word meditation. So instead of thinking that I'm meditating, we're just noticing how it is. Right? We're noticing there is sensitivity right now. A kind of unavoidable exposure. So just notice that. Sensitivity to seeing and hearing and touching, smelling and tasting, and sensitivity to mental activity as well. So in a way, it's an act of courage to be willing to be vulnerable to all of this sensitivity, this exposure. All of it coming and going, unfolding as it does, and being known. And so our practice in the midst of all this natural, unavoidable sensitivity, our practice is remembering to recognize that it is being known. That all this sensitivity, this exposure, that experience is being known right now. So just notice what the mind is knowing And in that, you'll recognize, oh yeah, this is being known. So another way to help remember is like we're remembering the knowing. We're not doing the knowing as much as we're learning how to remember there is knowing. How do we know? Because this experience is being known, if we remember. So when we use a particular meditation anchor, like being aware of the sensations of breathing in and being aware of the sensations of breathing out, it's not really about me or you doing the breathing in and the breathing out. It's more about remembering to recognize that breathing in is being known. And remembering to recognize that breathing out is being known. We're not trying to get somewhere or fix something. Learning how to keep the present moment in mind. And even when the mind has been lost in thought, as soon as you recognize that, then the mind is no longer lost in thought. So knowing that I've been lost in thought is a moment of practice, of being aware. So it's more about recognizing the knowing and less about doing, you doing something or me doing something. So we're developing this new habit, returning to the knowing, you could say. It's really simple, but it's not the habit of the mind. So it's a difficult practice, even though it's really simple. And again, our practice, it's more about recognizing that this experience is being known than it is about directing attention or trying to make something happen. That's true if we're working with an anchor, a meditative anchor, also called a primary meditation object, like being with the breath. Or we're doing a more open awareness practice where we simply notice or are aware of whatever's predominant moment by moment. So it has this receptive observing, or we're knowing what the mind is knowing what the mind is conscious of moment by moment. In the same way, a mirror just reflects what is happening in front of it. We don't have to judge experience. It's just more simple than that. This is being known, or this is being felt. And the real effort we need to make is the effort to be interested in the present moment. Whether that present moment has a wide lens, the totality of our experience in the moment, or a more specific lens on the breath, feeling the breath coming in or feeling the breath going out. And even the most seductive distraction that might come our way, that the mind gets entangled with, ultimately it's just something being felt and known. So take a little time, move your body however you want to move it, stretch a bit. So nice to see everybody here in the room and all of you on Zoom for our Sunday morning weekly practice group. I want to thank Wynn Fricke, my wonderful partner for so many years, and also the co-founder of Common Ground who spoke last Sunday. Some of you know I was leading the President's Day weekend retreat with Shelley Graff, the other guiding teacher here, and we do that every year. Yeah, and I thought because of that, or inspired by that maybe, it'd be a good time to review our basic practice instructions. And this is what I'm going to talk about today is something you might hear at the beginning of a residential retreat. I know not everyone has been able to get on a retreat. You might be raising kids or just not interested or whatever it is, but the practice is the same as, we try to practice when we're doing our morning sit or coming to the center or walking from our car to our office space. It's just that when we're on a Buddhist insight meditation retreat, we have more ideal conditions. That's all. That's really the difference. And the ideal conditions are just fewer things to sweep our mind away into our likes and dislikes and troubles and dramas, right? But, we carry a lot of that with us when we go on retreats. So even though we're not getting the external stimuli, there are a lot of internal stimuli to worry and fantasize and get caught in dramas. So the basic way I've been giving instructions on residential retreats now for a while comes in part from Sayadaw Tejaniya. It's a Burmese Buddhist monk, a wonderful teacher who I've had the good fortune to practice with over the years. And you can get a lot of his teachings online at dharmaseed.org. All his retreats that he's done at Spirit Rock and IMS in Massachusetts have been recorded, all the Q&A sessions. And they're wonderful. And then there are a number of books that are freely available online. Some of you know every Sunday I have a document that has some resources for people who want to dig in a little deeper. So you can just look on our calendar for the Sunday morning program. You'll see the link to a Google Doc. And on that is a link to one of Sayadaw's wonderful little books, Dhamma Everywhere it's called. And it's, like I said, the PDF is available online freely. Sayadaw means teacher. It's in Burmese Buddhism. A monastic teacher would usually, a senior teacher would have Sayadaw before their name. And you is just like Mr. or Sir. So Sayadaw, U, and then Tejaniya is his name, his monastic name. So the first thing Sayadaw might emphasize is just the valuing of relaxation. And it's easy to want to be dismissive about, well, yeah, okay, I got that. Move on. But this is a pretty serious or pretty difficult instruction to not to do relaxation. If I said relax, for most of us that'd be a cause for getting tight. What am I doing wrong? Why can't I do relaxation? So instead we want to cultivate a valuing of relaxation. We want it sort of front and center, not just when we're sitting or on a retreat, but all day long, so that whenever we notice tension, bodily or mental tension, it's just this very natural, compassionate sort of way of showing up. It's like, what's that about? Is it helping? Is it necessary, the tightness? Like right now. And just to experiment, like as I'm going through these 4 instructions that I give, at the beginning of retreats, just in a very in the moment way, just play with them as you hear me talking about them. So valuing relaxation, being curious about tension, and even like, wanting tension to go away is also more tension. So But we totally get it, right? Because it's unpleasant, painful even, and the natural thing to do with pain is to go, yuck, or push it away. But that aversive reaction to what's unpleasant amplifies, right? It adds to the unpleasantness. So, oh, it hurts. My shoulders hurt, my knee hurts, my mind's crazy. Just the different ways that we're experiencing unpleasantness, and that movement towards acceptance is in the direction of valuing relaxation. Like, yeah, my body might be this way, my mind might be this way right now, but I'm not going to amplify it by hating it. If there's something I can do to minimize, to reduce the ache in my knee or the pain in my heart, the heaviness in my heart, well, I'll do it. But I'm not going to immediately be averse to it, because right, when we're balanced, when the mind's clear, I've learned that lesson. That doesn't help. If it helped, I do it. I do the aversive response, right? But it doesn't help. Of course, we have to get that in our bones, and this is part of that first instruction, to value relaxation. And it's easy to remember. There's only going to be 4 instructions, right? So value relaxation. And you don't even need to do all 4. You could just do 1 until you're a total master. And you'll find by mastering one of them, you're doing a lot of the work of the other 3 that you're not paying attention to. And the most important thing about that, I just want to repeat, is people presume, this honoring relaxation, valuing relaxation, they just assume they don't need to practice it. That they're good at it already, or okay, I got that. And just generally with all meditation instructions, to just understand that there's a world, literally a world of difference between really getting the concept and then knowing directly how it applies in our mind and our hearts. Because you can be very clear. You could write an excellent essay about how important it is to be relaxed. That would be really helpful. It might actually help other people actually value relaxation. There's a great story in the suttas and the discourses about, I'm forgetting the monk's name, but he was like a really effective teacher. People would get enlightened hearing his teachings, but he hadn't had the deep insights himself. But for some reason, he could be very articulate about it. Until there was a novice monk, so just like a little boy who had deep insight, deep awakening, and he was embarrassed to go to any of his students who had become wise people to ask for instruction. So he asked this novice monk, and I think he had him, just to take care of his pride, had him go walk in a swamp, just stand there until he just kind of was able to submit. And then he gave him instructions, and he started to practice, and he had some success. But so when we hear something about valuing relaxation, and the next one is remembering to recognize awareness, right? So I said they're short and sweet. Valuing relaxation, remembering to recognize awareness. See how easy it is. Okay, oh yeah, awareness. Okay, got that. But it's so, with awareness, there's always a sense of, what am I, a doing. And what we want to get about recognizing awareness is how all-inclusive it is. It's like a foundational move for this path, this basic path of wisdom and awareness that the Buddha taught. Just that reflective recognition and really getting that down, that the mind can just recognize that this is being known. And even if your mind wants to dismiss the value of that dismissing of the value of it is also just something being known. And if you think it's the greatest thing in the world, this move, oh yeah, this is being known, that is also just being known, whatever it is. So that's the key, is that it's a basic move that requires a relative amount of relaxation, right? If we're sort of bound up with trying to get somewhere in our practice, I need my Buddhist practice to save me because my life is so stressed, then it won't really work. So it is a bit of a setup, because a lot of us are stressed, are overwhelmed, don't feel that safe in our lives. And then, we maybe are attracted to doing some of this training that the Buddhist instructions provide or point us towards. But we really need that, whatever we can do to feel safe enough to relax some. And it's a great, I think, tragedy that the conditions in a lot of people's lives doesn't really support this turning inward, right? Because they're just on the edge in whatever way they might be on the edge, whether it's poverty or being mistreated in one way or another, taken advantage of. So we want to value relaxation. Then we want to remember to recognize awareness. This is what Sayadaw says here. I would like yogis. I just want to mention yogis, you hear that word a lot. It's not talking about hatha yoga, the postures, but back in the day, people who practice were called yogis. So a lot of, when you go on retreat, it's just, what is my yogi job? And talk to the yogis about this or that. It just means talking to the people who are on retreat or to the people who are practicing. I would like the yogis to get to the point where they realize that without focusing or paying attention, the nature of knowing is happening. They are too busy thinking they are practicing. They need to step back in order to see what is happening. They need to switch from doing to recognizing. So here's just a little reflection you can do, a little experiment. Just notice your hands touching whatever they're touching. And then just check, are you having to do the awareness of the touching? We have to remember to notice, but we're not actually doing the awareness of the touching. When we remember to notice the touching, we're aware of the touching. Can you shut the awareness off? Right, the sensitivity to the touching of your hands. Is there an off button? I mean, we can forget about it. And we could do this with any of the sense gates, like with hearing. Now you're interested in hearing because I just mentioned it. So, which is fine, but are you personally hearing? Like, are you doing the hearing? There is hearing. We can say it that way. There is hearing. Hearing is being known. And you see, the effort is to be interested in hearing in order to keep it in mind. Hearing is being known. It's the same thing with mental activity. We can be aware, the mind can be aware of mental activity, the mood, the attitude, the particular thoughts, the particular mental images that come and go. So we're sensitive. I mean, that's really a truth about being a human being, is sensitivity. Through these 6 sense gates, we say in Buddhism, these 6 ways that we're sensitive. Sensitive to mental activities, sensitive to sounds and sights and smells and tastes and touches. And that's the totality of it. Can we remember that this is being known? And it's in our practice, we put more emphasis on the is being known than what it is that's being known. Because it's just more subtle and more easily missed. Like if I'm feeling a strong emotion, like some sadness now, it really misses a very important truth if I miss that the sadness is being known. Because if it's just sadness, it really lends itself to that identification, I'm sad, and has real implications for the next response or the next move. But if it's more balanced, like there's sadness and there's a clear recognition is being known, the sadness is being known, it's just something here being known. And that isn't a way of being dismissive of the emotion of sadness. It's just the truth. It is, that's what it is, sadness. Or it could be happiness. I could have used the example of the emotion of happiness. Happiness is being known. You know, I feel the cool breeze from the open window. Coolness is being known. If I stumble over my words, I'll feel some embarrassment. Embarrassment is being known. There's a kind of coolness or equanimity in understanding that absolutely everything in our experience is something being known. Now, a lot of people will want to push back on that, like that's somehow being dismissive of our human experience. But it is our human experience. It's something being known. And again, this is where the words, what's important is that you get a felt sense of that, experiential sense of that, a subjective sense of that. Like, how are you changed by bringing that perspective in, by training your mind to understand that this is what's being known or this is what's being felt. Throughout human history, you know, there's been this insight, of course, has been sensed by countless people probably, but you know, they've articulated it according to their particular time and place, culture, this reflective nature of our human experience. And it really is an antidote for attachment. That's what we'll notice with practice. It starts to affect the habit of getting attached, taking things personally. The mind just has more space, more of that spaciousness than it would otherwise have. The kind of definition of ignorance in a Buddhist sense is thinking that I know, where the mind has congealed around an idea. I'm at common ground, or I'm a bad person, or I'm a good person. I'm better than you, I'm worse than you, or even I'm the same as you. Right? These different ways that conceit happens in our minds, right? And then the mind congeals. And then whenever there's a moment of my mind thinking that it knows, that's a moment the mind's not interested in being open in this reflective way. It loses that capacity. And the mind, in a sense, is born into a very rigid existence, and as long as that sort of way of thinking or way of relating continues. So this is being known. Can this be okay, that this is being known? And there's that sense of space. It also has a flavor of humility. The fact that our minds we're training our mind not to congeal around an idea, a concept, point of view, not to define the moment with concept, right? So there's a softer, more open, less fixed, more humble quality to the mind. Just see if you can experiment with that now, like just being here and being in the knowing, not in the known, like what you think this is, but just being in the knowing. And it doesn't make us a less functional human being. It makes us a more functional human being in all the sort of nitty-gritty ways we have to be human. Because when we're in the knowing, we're really intimate with the natural sensitivity that's there with being human, including feeling what we feel in our heart, all that emotional intelligence. And it doesn't keep us from using ideas and concepts. It's not, the problem isn't ideas and concepts, the problem is how the mind relates to them. As if it needs the ground, that clinging to an idea, that fixing on an idea appears to provide. But we can learn to tolerate things being unfixed and open. It's almost like we're cultivating a taste for that humble space of knowing that we don't know as we navigate interactions and everything there is in life. So that's the first two instructions. Valuing relaxation. The second one is really the foundational one, remembering to recognize awareness. And it's the, same as saying, remembering to recognize that this is being known. And that this is being known, like I said, there's something complete. It's like when we have the experience, this is being known, there's something like there's a wise sense, right? It's an act of wisdom, of discernment, the sense that this is an all-inclusive understanding that this is being known. It doesn't need more. Like this is what's being known. It's hard to put into words, but in a way, in our heart, when we get a sense of it, it's like there's a confidence in the heart, in our heart, that isn't easily shaken by that. And then the third one is the natural corollary to the second, which is keeping the present moment in mind, right? So we're remembering to recognize the present moment, that's the second. And the third is building the continuity of that. It's a different skill set than the first one. It's really the practice of not forgetting. The second step is recognizing the most important thing, that this is being known, the knowing. And then how to keep that in mind, that's the third. How to not forget the most important thing. Because there's so many little off-ramps. I mean, one of the things is when we start being able to do the second, to remember to recognize the present moment, even with a few moments of continuity, there's a lot of energy that starts to build in the mind, just because the mind for a few moments is not distracted. And though that energy buildup really triggers a lot of off-ramps to think, I'm really getting it. And so we have to keep remembering, that energy is just something being felt, or that confidence is just something being known, or that doubt is just something being known. We have to somehow not lose that subtle thread of the practice, no matter what happens. This is Sayadaw U Tejaniya again. Let the mind and body do what they do naturally. It just needs to be seen. That's all. And then his teacher, a great Burmese master, Sweo Min Sayadaw, Sayadaw U Tejaniya's teacher, would say, don't practice like you're practicing, right? Because we turn it into a self-centered project, don't we? And it is inevitably going to be frustrating. But we're going to do that anyway. We all do that. And so much of the practice is teasing out the self-centeredness in the practice. And it's a real art, and we have to learn this everywhere in life, how to be all in, but not have it be about the self. I mean, some of you are parents, right? I'm assuming you got to be all in as a parent. It doesn't really work to sort of not want to be doing it when you're a parent. But if it's all about you, it's not going to work, right? It's really about somehow, being there for the kid or the kids. Giving the self away, letting it. And it's not about not taking care of ourselves. It's just about we're centering the present moment as opposed to centering the self. But we're there in the present moment with everything else. So we're not, it's like when somebody is living in a way where they're neglecting taking care of themselves, that is in its own way a self-centered project, right? Like, oh, I'm just not deserving, it's all about you. So that's also a self-view. So when we're dropping that self-orientation and really cultivating a present moment orientation, like, oh, it's this is being known, the heart is naturally, unavoidably sensitive to this already. All I can do is be forgetful of this. But when I'm not forgetful of this, there's already intimacy. It doesn't require me trying to be intimate with the present moment. Intimacy with the present moment is the natural state when the mind isn't forgetful. But we sort of don't trust that, and it can even be a little scary. So much of our distractedness, and being lost in thought, is because we don't trust that experience. And it's because it's vulnerable to be intimate, to be feeling what we're feeling and sensitive, empathetic to everything around us. And a lot of our strategies for survival and belonging and all that kind of stuff get challenged, right? It's just everything gets reworked when the present moment and the sensitivity, intimacy with the present moment is centered, as opposed to our ideas about me and mine, I, me, and mine, which aren't always in that sort of classical mode of conceit, right? It can also be that I'm not worthy of anything. That could be my I, me, mine conceit, right? And it's all about you guys, you folks out there. So Sayadaw says, every time you recognize that you've lost awareness, be happy. The fact that you've recognized that you've lost awareness means you are now aware. Because we will get distracted all the time. But it's like there's always this moment to recognize, oh, so it's like this. I've been lost in thought, and it's like this. This is what that feels like. And there's no reason ever for hating ourselves or judging ourselves, because to have fuel to judge myself for being a failure at my practice, that would only happen when I recognize I've been distracted. In that moment, I'm awake. Oh yeah, I've been lost in thought. So that, if anything, is appropriate in that moment is just that appropriate gratitude for like being back in the practice. Oh, so glad to know that this is what it feels like to have been lost in thought. It feels like this. This is what's being felt. This is what's being known. Back home in the present moment. One of the things we use, like we did in the guided meditation today, to help, to support the continuity of present moment awareness, keep recognizing awareness, right? That's the third instruction. Valuing relaxation, remembering to recognize awareness, keep recognizing awareness, right? The continuity of present moment awareness. We sometimes work with an anchor, but this is one of those things that can get misunderstood. The classic, I mean, there are many that you can use, but being aware of the breath coming in, being aware of the breath going out, I'm sure that's not new to any of you. You've heard that instruction many times. But remember, we're using the breath as a sort of a surrogate for reality, right? This little bit of reality, we're highlighting it so we can train the mind to be interested in recognizing awareness and to keep recognizing awareness, to keep the present moment in mind. We're not trying to manipulate the breath. It's not about the object. It's about the present moment. And we're just conveniently using the breath. We could be conveniently using the experience of the body, the sitting body or the walking body or the lying down body, depending on the posture, the standing body. Or we could use seeing, or we could use hearing, right? We could use any aspect of the present moment to recognize it's being known and to practice, to train the mind to acquire a taste to keep that in mind, the simplicity of that in mind. Breathing in is being known from the beginning of the in-breath to the end of the in-breath, from the beginning of the out-breath to the end of the out-breath. And just that sense that this is the totality of the present moment, but I'm using the anchor in the forefront of my attention, but everything else in the present moment is there in the periphery or in the background, right? So we're not pushing anything away. It's just we're training the mind to keep the present moment in mind. We're training the mind not to forget the most important thing, which is the knowing, right? That this is being known. And that's just synonymous with being present, because now, as Ajahn Sumedho, a Western Buddhist monk, said, a kind of a famous line, now is the knowing. It's like, that's what is relevant about now, is that it's being known. Now, initially, you're sort of taking that on faith, that that's a significant statement. But you want to chew on that. You want to play with that. That now, what's relevant about now, which, of course, our life is just a succession of nows, right? So that's our whole life. What's relevant is the knowing. Now, when we have bills and knee aches and relationship issues, and it doesn't seem like now is that significant. You know, it's like, or the knowing, rather, is significant. But that, I think, is just because people haven't really worked with it or played with it, gotten interested in the knowing. And that, you know, whether we know it or not, that's often what brings us to a Buddhist meditation center, is just this sense of, this intuitive sense that there's something huge that I haven't been interested in, and it's somewhere close at hand, right? And we kind of know it, like we have a mind, but and the mind, it isn't something to study objectively, right? The mind is this. Like, where is all of this experience that each of us are having? Where is it happening? We might say, well, it's happening here in Minneapolis at Come. No. All of this is happening in the mind, isn't it? And, we could be right next to somebody else here in the room, but their reality is not the same as my reality at all. But we're not interested in that. We have the external orientation that we might associate with sort of animal nature, which of course we have. We have an animal nature. And that sort of, is there anything out there that's going to eat me? Or is anything out there I can eat or mate with? We have that kind of an orientation, and to some large degree. But because as humans, we seem to have this capacity for what we call, it's a funny word, but generally we use a spiritual inclination, for lack of a better word, which is to use our sensitivity to sense what's here but subtle. And in our Theravada Buddhist tradition, early Buddhist tradition, we often call that, being interested in the knowing. Being interested in the mind that knows. That's what Buddha means. Right? Buddha means being awake. Wakefulness, awakenedness. To build that continuity, you want not just to be experimenting with using an anchor like the breath, but also getting good at asking questions that keep the mind interested in the present moment. Because remember, that's the best way to understand what is appropriate effort. Like we sit and it just feels like a mess, and we sit again, it feels like a mess, and then we're motivated, so we ask the question, like, what am I doing wrong? How to apply skillful effort so I can experience some kind of success, like there's some learning happening in my practice. And so then, someone might ask themselves or ask a teacher, what is right effort? What is skillful effort in meditation practice? And a relatively good answer is right effort, skillful effort, is the effort to be interested in the present moment. So when we're using the breath as an anchor, we're using the breath just as some aspect of the present moment to train, like interest. We can learn to be interested in anything. I had a great biology teacher in college who was like the world's expert in slime molds. You can get interested in anything. And and another way to sort of promote that interest is to ask yourself some questions sometimes. Well, what's the mind knowing? Can I be okay with what the mind is knowing? What's the mind knowing now? Can this be okay? Like, does it require any sort of response, whatever I'm feeling or knowing? Can this be okay? What else is here but it isn't being acknowledged? What else is in experience that I'm experiencing or sensitive to now that isn't being acknowledged? Is the mind wanting something? Is the mind averse to something? And you'll come up with your own questions, but the questions are just there as a way to strengthen interest, right? And it's just like you're dropping them in. Any mental activity happening? What's the mood? And that leads us to the last instruction. So I said there are 4. We're valuing relaxation, remembering to recognize awareness, keep recognizing awareness, And then the fourth is to check our attitude. What's the attitude now? How's the mind relating right now? What's the mood? Is the mind taking this all personally? Or is the mind seeing this as nature? Just causes and conditions coming and going. And next week I'll come back to these four, but I'll mostly spend time on this fourth instruction, checking the attitude. It's really more the wisdom end of the practice that needs a little bit more time, and I see the children are here. And as Jenny, you can invite them in. I'll just mention that this coming Saturday, Shelley Graff will be teaching a half-day retreat, 1 to 5 p.m. You can register online. That's both in person and online. And then also tonight, if you want to hear some more Dharma talks, Chaz DeCapra will be here, a wonderful teacher from the East Coast who's been leading the TCVC retreat, the winter retreat, for many years with Rebecca Bradshaw. And that's 7 to 8:30. You can do that online or here in the building at 7 o'clock tonight. Good, and welcome, kids. I hear you're going to sing for us again.